This is CPRmetro.org, community progressive radio for the metropolitan New York area and the world, and this is the CPR Morning Show.
Arise, ye workers, from your slumber. Arise, ye prisoners of want. That's right. For reason in revolt now thunder. Chains of hatred, greed, and fear. Ha ha! Away with all your superstitions. Serve our masses. Arise, arise. We'll change henceforth the old tradition and spurn the dust to win the prize. So comrades, come on and rally. Then the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race. No more deluded by reaction. On tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action. They'll break ranks and fight no more. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, each at the forge must do their duty, and we'll strike while the iron is hot. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole beautiful human race. So comrades, come on, let's go rally. Ha! And the last fight, let us face. The International unites the whole darn human race.
This is CPRmetro.org, community progressive radio for the metropolitan New York area and the world, from the metropolitan New York area to the world and beyond, wherever you may be. You're inside the CPR Morning Show with Don DeBar, and I am Don DeBar on this Tuesday, the 29th day of October, 2013. We begin our program today with a report of the news of the last 24 hours from the CPR Newsroom. From Community Public Radio, this is the CPR News. From New York, I'm Don DeBar. Spain is the latest to complain about American spying. During a single month last year, the U.S. National Security Agency intercepted some 60 million phone calls in Spain, according to newly leaked documents from Edward Snowden in a report to be published in the Spanish daily The World. Information reportedly provided to the publication by the former NSA contractor shows that the NSA collected data on roughly 60 million phone calls in the month of December 2012. An NSA graphic entitled Spain Last 30 Days reportedly shows the daily flow of phone calls within Spain, and that on one day alone, December 11th, 2012, the NSA monitored more than 3.5 million phone calls. Although apparently the content of the calls was not monitored, the serial numbers and phone numbers of the handsets used, the locations, SIM cards, and durations of the calls were monitored. Emails and other social media were also monitored. Recent revelations show that the spying has not only been about terrorism, as has been claimed repeatedly by Washington. Rather, the U.S. has been caught red-handed spying on conferences designed to negotiate economic agreements, on oil companies, on ministries that oversee mines and energy resources, and on other commercial entities, as well as on the democratically elected leaders of allied states and entire populations in those countries. The revelation is part of the unraveling scandal over the vast U.S. spying program, given another boost last week when an article in Germany's Der Spiegel revealed that Washington was directly snooping on at least 35 world leaders. A coalition of more than 20 countries, led by Brazil and Germany, are now pushing for a UN resolution condemning the U.S. over indiscriminate wiretapping and extraterritorial surveillance. They seek independent oversight of electronic monitoring. Meanwhile, here in the U.S. this past Saturday, a coalition of groups against mass surveillance organized a rally that drew thousands to the National Mall in front of the U.S. Capitol in Washington. Speakers included former senior NSA staffer and whistleblower Thomas Drake, former New Mexico governor and 2012 Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson, Republican Representative Justin Amash from Michigan, and former Democratic Representative Dennis Kucinich of Ohio.
We gather this afternoon before our nation's capital to call for an end to the spying and an end to the lying. 12 years ago, America's leaders made a fateful choice to attack Iraq, a nation which did not have anything to do with 9/11. We wreaked vengeance against innocent bystanders, over 1 million innocent Iraqis dead, thousands of our troops dead, tens of thousands of our soldiers injured, trillions of dollars added in national debt. The never-ending so-called war on terror is a war of errors and misdeeds, which produced a Patriot Act, a bill I voted against because I read it. The Patriot Act gave rebirth to the National Security Agency as a technological cyclops. The NSA grows stronger as it collects more of our personal information. The U.S. Constitution grows weaker. Today we gather to restore our freedoms, reclaim the Constitution, repeal the Patriot Act, and abolish the NSA. We gather today not as partisans, but as Americans. We know the monstrous national security state is the product not of a single party, but of a system of government which today bears no resemblance to the lofty goals of America's founders. This system has produced policies which are a concoction of lies which have fooled no one, lies which took us into Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, lies which put drone over the skies in many countries, lies which tell us that in the name of security we must give up our liberty. The state has become like a leviathan, unaccountable to anyone, slaying dragons abroad while crushing individual rights and freedoms here at home. As the government claims falsely to be fighting for democracy abroad, we are truly losing our democracy here at home, and that is not acceptable. In the name of security, the state has become a big brother metadata collector which has appropriated our private space. In the name of security, the state opens our email. We say, stop the mass spying. In the name of security, the state downloads our contacts and our photos. We say, in the name of security, the state monitors our phone calls. We say, in the name of security, the state checks our financial records. We say, now some will say, we willingly give up our privacy when we join social networks. We reject the right of the state to troll and call from social networks or any social space without warrants. We reject the right of the state in the name of security to make everyone a suspect, no one a free citizen in an Orwellian surveillance society. We know the truth. We have to be protected from such a state, not by it. The national security state is government as a racket, an NSA-driven protection racket, which extracts billions of dollars every year from taxpayers with a promise to protect us. What we get instead of protection are drones and extrajudicial killings of civilians around the world. What we get is the destruction of friendships abroad, collecting information on hundreds of millions of people, including leaders we call our friends. The NSA appears to have gone rogue, but it has not. It is a direct reflection of what our own government has become, a threat to freedom at home and abroad. We call on our friends in the international community to understand that there are many Americans who object to the mass collection of private information in Germany, France, Mexico, Brazil, and other countries. We insist on freedom and privacy. In solidarity with our friends in Germany, we say, wir bestehen auf Freiheit und Privatsphäre. We insist on freedom and privacy. In solidarity with our friends in France, we say, nous insistons sur la liberté et la vie privée. We insist on freedom and privacy. In solidarity with our friends in Mexico and throughout the Spanish-speaking world, we say, insistemos en que la libertad y la privacidad. In solidarity with our friends in Brazil, we say, insistimos em liberdade e privacidade. We insist on freedom and privacy. The state has made this equation. Security or liberty, take your pick. Listen to Benjamin Franklin's well-known admonition. In 1755, he said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Today, in 2013, faced with a choice from a government which moves without morality, without respect for liberty or law, here or abroad, without adherence to the Constitution, let us declare that we have made the choice and we choose liberty. We choose liberty over a national security state. We choose liberty over threats. We choose liberty over fear. We choose liberty over suspicion. We choose liberty. We demand the protection of our First Amendment rights. We demand freedom of association. We demand freedom of speech. We demand freedom of press. We demand the protection of our Fourth Amendment rights. We demand the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. We assert, and we demand a right to privacy. We want the government out of our bedrooms, off of our phones, out of our email, out of our contacts. We want the government out of our reading lists, our personal finances, out of our education records. We want the government to stop wasting our money trying to prove that they are protecting us. In 1775, Patrick Henry said, "Give me liberty or give me death." In 2013, we demand life and liberty. We claim life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness as our rightful inheritance as Americans. This was the promise of the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and women, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government. If these words, written by Thomas Jefferson, sound radical today, it is because the U.S. government has journeyed far from the spirit of July the 4th, 1776, which was a spirit not just of revolution, but an evolution of an awareness that the very legitimacy of the state depended upon the support of the natural rights of its citizens. We are here to reawaken that spirit, to rekindle that awareness. We are here to demand the repeal of the Patriot Act and the shutting down of the NSA. We choose liberty. There is no middle ground between the tyranny of the state and the rights of a free people. We demand that our government focus on real security issues at home. The security of a job, the security of an education, the security of health care for all, the security of retirement, the security of housing, the security of our neighborhoods, the security of investments, the security of small businesses. This is real security. We're prepared to take back our government. Are we prepared to take back our government? We will take it back from unresponsive political parties. We will take it back from an administration which mocks the Constitution. We will take it back from a Congress which gave away our rights in a panic. We will take it back from corporations which collude with the government to destroy our rights. We are ready to engage. We are prepared to recommit ourselves, as did the original patriots so many years ago, to mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor. Hear the call of history to a new generation of Americans to relight the lamp of liberty. Hear the call of destiny, that it is for us to reclaim America. Let us do it with a passion for truth. Let us do it with a passion for justice. Let us do it with a passion for freedom. Let us do it with relentless commitment. Let us declare an unbreakable unity, and let us prepare for the arduous task of fully restoring our constitutional freedoms, our rights in this, the land we love. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was Dennis Kucinich speaking to the crowd assembled in Washington this past weekend. A documentary produced by a U.S. filmmaker sheds new light on the impacts of U.S. assassination drone attacks in Pakistan. Opposition is growing to the aerial attacks, which the U.S. also conducts in countries like Yemen and Somalia. Robert Greenwald's newest full-length feature, Unmanned, America's Drone Wars, is being released this Wednesday, the 30th of October. The film was screened in Pakistan ahead of the worldwide premiere on Wednesday. Former Pakistani presidential candidate Imran Khan was there and had this to say.
Pakistan pays a heavy price both ways. First, the civilians get killed, and then the retaliation is against Pakistanis. So either way, Pakistanis get killed. And Pakistan government must take a stand and stop these drone attacks, which are a violation of all international laws, all humanitarian rights.
Activists from around the country will be descending upon Tucson, Arizona this coming weekend for a national gathering called Tear Down the Walls. Among the many walls that organizers plan to tear down, Wall Street, the U.S. border and Israeli apartheid walls, prison walls, the walls of capitalism, militarism, and oppression by race, gender, ethnicity, and personal identity, all of the walls that weaken the various components of the peace and justice movements. The plan is to bring the disparate pieces from around the country together to strategize to build a more unified, powerful movement for transformational change in the United States. It hopes to be the largest gathering of people working for social and economic justice in the country this year. Chuck Kaufman is national coordinator of the Alliance for Global Justice, one of the groups organizing the conference. He spoke with Ernesto Aguilar of Liberation Radio.
The Alliance for Global Justice, besides the core work that we do primarily with Latin America Solidarity, also acts as fiscal sponsor for over 70 groups that don't have their own tax-exempt status. And we realized that that put us in a unique position of having relationships with organizations that span a number of movements in the U.S. With overlapping missions, but our movement in the U.S. is so siloed that we often don't talk to each other in other movements. So we thought Tear Down the Walls would be a good way to bring together a lot of movements and build a stronger, more unified overall movement for transformational change in the U.S.
Now, I understand this conference is focused not on just being the standard affair where people sit down and listen to a speaker, but is very action-oriented. Is that correct?
That's correct. We'll have the regular span of workshops on every topic you can imagine. We have almost 100 workshops, but we're also having 6 people's power assemblies on economic justice, the drug war, immigration and border militarization, ecology and empire, anti-repression and prison industrial complex, and U.S. imperialism and anti-militarism. And those are going to be 2 and 3-quarter hour long strategy sessions with the task of coming out at the end of it, agreeing to work together on at least one nationally coordinated local day of action over the next year. So, we've all been to conferences. It's great. We learn a lot, and we go home, and 2 weeks later, it hasn't affected our work. We're trying to make sure that Tear Down the Walls does affect our work.
For listeners who may not be familiar, how does a People's Power Assembly work?
Well, each of them are being organized by a group of organizations that do work in that area, and so each of them will have a different format. But most of them will have a segment that's informational, and then probably break out into small groups and discuss possible actions, come back together and adopt a nationally coordinated local day of action.
What are the range of groups represented who will be speaking and presenting at Tear Down the Walls?
Well, we have 78 groups that have been participating. They range from groups like Code Pink and Courage to Resist, the Answer Coalition, of course, Fellowship of Reconciliation, Global Women's Strike, the Latin America Solidarity Coalition, Move to Amend, Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, and on, U.S. Social Forum. We decided at the beginning not to go with a lot of big-name speakers, but rather little people who do big work. But we do have, some speakers that people may recognize. Javier Cecilia, the Mexican poet whose son was killed in the militarized drug war, and who started the Mexican peace movement and anti-drug war movement. Cindy Sheehan, the anti-war activist that people will remember from the early days of the Iraq War. Medea Benjamin from Code Pink, David Cobb from Move to Amend. And we're really excited that we have Mother Agnes, who's a Syrian nun who will be starting a national tour at our Tear Down the Walls conference, and she will be coming here directly from Syria and opposes U.S. and European intervention in Syria's civil war.
Why is a conference this diverse so important during this political period?
We're really weakened by the fact that we're split into so many different movements, and so this is the period where the right wing and the 1% are very organized, and the revolutionary and progressive groups are very focused on narrow network and understand each other's work and hopefully build a more unified movement.
And how can people get more information about the conference?
Yeah, our webpage is www.afgj.org. That's the initials of Alliance for Global Justice.org, and everything is up there. We encourage people, if they're coming, to register so that we have enough food, etc., housing, and whatnot. All the workshops that were submitted on time are listed up there, about 80 of them, explanations about the People's Power Assemblies, etc. There's a lot of information on the webpage.
Any final comments you'd like to share with listeners?
The conference starts at noon on Friday, November 1st, and runs through Sunday, November 3rd, ending with participation in Tucson's iconic All Souls procession, which includes people remembering the dead, and there's a big party, including lots of music and fire jugglers and all kinds of fun things. And it's in Tucson, Arizona. We'll be holding it at the Tucson Convention Center, and all that information is on our webpage, www.afgj.org. Well, we hope everybody will come. We think that this is a conference that could be movement-changing and certainly will educate people. We're holding it in southern Arizona, which is the front line of the struggle against our racist immigration policies and the militarization of the border. So there will be a lot of information for people from the parts of the country that aren't on the border that they can take home and use.
That was Chuck Kaufman of the Alliance for Global Justice. You can find more information about the conference at the Alliance for Global Justice website at www.afgj.org. In London, jury selection began today in the phone hacking trial of two former top editors of Rupert Murdoch's now shuttered News of the World tabloid and 6 other people, all accused in a scandal that reached into the top echelons of Britain's government and journalism establishment. The defendants include Rebecca Brooks, a former editor and an executive of News International, once the British branch of Murdoch's News Corp empire, and Andy Coulson, another former News of the World editor who became chief press officer to Prime Minister David Cameron. Brooks and Coulson both face charges that include conspiracy to intercept mobile phone messages, bribery of public officials, and conspiracy to pervert the court of justice by concealing evidence. The trial was the culmination of a police inquiry that began in July 2011 after the Guardian newspaper published revelations of phone hacking by the News of the World, then under Brooks's editorship, into the mobile phone messages of Millie Dowler, a teenage girl who was kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered in March of 2002. Public outcry forced the Murdochs to shut down the popular 168-year-old Sunday tabloid. Prime Minister Cameron ordered a public inquiry that revealed hacking was a widespread practice by tabloid journalists, targeting cell phones and emails of celebrities, politicians, and crime victims, among others. The inquiry also found evidence of illegal payments to public officials. In 3 separate police investigations, more than 100 media executives, journalists, and public officials have been arrested. About 40 have been charged thus far, and new press regulations are under contentious discussion, with a government decision due later this week. Meanwhile, in Somalia, journalists face an entirely different reality. Far from the privilege that breeds impunity, they instead find their very lives at risk. Last Tuesday morning, Somali television journalist Mohammed Mohammed, known as Tima Ade, was seriously wounded when armed men attacked him on his way home from work. He was shot more than 5 times. Colleagues and local residents in Wadajir district, where the attack took place, immediately rushed him to Medina Hospital in Mogadishu. His attack and previous assaults have increased the security concerns of journalists in the field who need greater protection and basic safety training. Every day there are stories about attacks on journalists in the country. Assassinations of journalists continue, and few investigations have taken place to find the perpetrators. Abayomi Ezekwe is the executive editor of Pan-African Journal, and he gave us this report on the situation facing journalists trying to cover fighting in yet another battleground for the U.S.'s so-called War on Terror.
In the Horn of Africa nation of Somalia, a Somalian journalist died in the hospital on Saturday, October the 26th, after being attacked by gunmen just this past Tuesday. His colleagues told this to the international media on Sunday, October the 27th, bringing the number of reporters killed in Somalia this year to 7. Somalia is a fragmented state where the federal government has limited control beyond the boundaries of the capital of Mogadishu. Islamists, al-Shabaab guerrilla fighters who control large swaths of the countryside still carry out bombings and shootings inside the capital of Mogadishu. Journalists have been among the victims since Somalia descended into war in the early 1990s, with the last year being the deadliest on record for journalists in the country, with 18 killed, according to the National Union of Somalia Journalists. In a separate incident, Somalia security agents stormed and shut down 2 radio stations. They beat and detained reporters and impounded their equipment on Saturday, October the 26th. And this is according to the Somali Union of Journalists. Now, the National Union of Somali Journalists said the raid was connected to stories that Radio Shabelle and Sky FM, both part of the Shabelle media network, had aired, touching on accusations of corruption within the U.S.-backed Somalia federal government. Police said they were carrying out an eviction order after the network failed to vacate the government-owned building. Both stations were housed in the same building, which also served as a residence for the journalists. The union said police arrested 36 journalists and detained them for several hours, adding police sources had told it that officers were working on bringing criminal charges against 8 reporters and the chairman of the Shabelle Media Network.
And that's all the news we have for you right now. For Community Public Radio, I'm Don DeBar in New York. Thanks for listening. And that's some of the news over the last 24 hours. This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the metropolitan New York area and the world. And now we begin our daily tour of the American cultural, political, and social anthropologique with this little musical interlude. Oh, this one. Here we go.
When you're close to me, I can feel your heartbeat. I can hear you breathing in my ear. Wouldn't you agree, baby? You and me got a groovy kind of love. We got a groovy kind of love. Anytime you want to, you can turn me on to anything you want to, anytime at all. When I taste your lips, oh, I start to shiver. Can't control the quivering inside. Wouldn't you agree, baby? You and me got a groovy kind of love. We got a groovy kind of love. When I'm in your arms, nothing seems to matter. If the world would shatter, I don't care. my girlfriend so far away. Please, Mr. Postman, look and see if there's a letter for me. I've been standing here waiting, Mr. Postman, so patiently, for just a card or just a letter saying she's returning home to me. Please, Mr. Postman, look and see. Oh yeah, you're back from please, Mr. Postman. Oh yeah, I heard from the gallows. So many days you passed me by, see the tears standing in my eyes. You didn't stop to make me feel better by leaving me a card or a letter to Mr. Postman. Look and see if there's a letter, oh yeah, for me. I've been waiting such a long time since I heard from that girlfriend of mine. You gotta wait a minute, oh yeah, wait a minute, oh yeah, you gotta wait a minute, oh yeah, check it and see one more time for me. You gotta wait a minute, oh yeah, wait a minute, oh yeah, Mr. Postman, oh yeah, deliver the letter, the sooner the better. You gotta wait a minute, oh yeah, wait a minute, oh yeah, you gotta wait a minute, oh yeah, gotta wait a minute,
Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. I went walking the other day and everything was going fine. I met a little boy named Billy Joe, and then I almost lost my mind. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. My eyes were wide open, but all that I can see is chapel bells are tolling for every one about me. But I don't worry, 'cause Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. And then she said, someone will look at me like I'm looking at you one day. Then I might find I don't want it any other way. So I don't worry, 'cause Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this. My mama said. Hey, don't you worry. Hey, don't you worry now. Mama said there'll be days like this, there'll be days like this.
It's not the way you smile that touched my heart. It's not the way you kiss that tears me apart. Oh, many nights roll by.
I sit alone at home and cry over you. What can I do? I can't help myself.
When baby, it's you. Baby, it's you. You should hear what they say about you. Cheat, cheat, sha-la-la-la-la. They say you've never, never, never been true. Cheat, cheat. Oh, doesn't matter what they say. I know I'm gonna love you any old way. What can I do when it's true? Baby, it's you. Baby, it's you. Can I do? I can't help myself. 'Cause baby, it's you. Baby, it's you. Don't leave me alone. Come on home. Baby, it's sha-la-la-la-la-la.
Sha-la-la-la-la. It's not the way you smile that touched my heart. Sha-la-la-la-la. It's not the way you kiss that tears me apart. Oh, many, many, many nights go by. I sit alone at home and I cry over you. What can I do? Cause baby, it's you. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. Baby, it's you. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. Sha-la-la-la-la. You should hear what they say about you. Cheat, cheat. Sha-la-la-la-la. They say you never, 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 ever been true. Cheat, cheat. Oh, it doesn't matter what they say. I know I'm gonna love you any old way. What can I do? And it's true. I don't want nobody, nobody. 'Cause baby, it's you. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. Baby, it's you. I know I'm gonna love you any old way. What can I do when it's true? I don't want nobody, nobody. 'Cause baby, it's you. Baby, it's you. Don't leave me all alone.
come easy, but I keep on waiting, anticipating for that soft voice to talk to me at night, for some tender arms to hold me tight. I keep waiting, I keep on waiting, but it ain't easy, it ain't easy. But Mama said you can't hurry love, no, you just have to wait. She said trust give it time, no matter how long it takes. You can't hurry love, no, you just have to wait. Keep falling in and out of love, in search for what I'm dreaming of. I long to find a love I'm sure about, that certain kind of love that moves on doubt. Keep falling in and out of love, still searching for that special one, to whom I can give my love completely, and feel a lasting love so sweetly. Just when I feel sure love's here to stay, it seems to suddenly just fade away. Can't seem to find that everlasting love that this heart of mine needs so much of. Keep falling in and out of love, can't seem to find the lasting kind. It seems I can't find the joy I need. Love always somehow all goes wrong for me. Falling in and out of love, falling in and out. I keep reaching out for tenderness, touching a hand that holds emptiness. Well, I'm looking for a love that lingers on long after that first kiss is gone. That kind of love that keeps burning bright long after we've said goodnight. Keep falling in and out of love, in search for what I'm dreaming of. Keep falling in and Mama's cooking bread. She wore a dirty, raggedy scarf around her head. Always had her stockings low, low to her feet. She just didn't know. She wore a sloppy dress. Oh, no matter how she tried, she always looked a mess. Out of the pot she ate, never used a fork or a dinner plate. I was always so afraid for my uptown friends to see her. Afraid one day when I was grown that I would be her. In a college town, away from home, a new identity I found. Said I was born in an each with maids and servants at my feet. I must have been insane. I lied and said Mama died on a weekend trip to Spain. She never got out of the house, never even boarded the train. Married a guy and was living high. I didn't want him to know her. She had a grandson 2 years old, but I'd never even show her. I'm living in shame. Mama, I miss you. I know you're not to blame. Mama, I miss you.
Green-eyed lady, lovely lady, strolling slowly towards the sun. Green-eyed lady, ocean lady, soothing every raging wave that comes. Green-eyed lady, passion's lady, dressed in love, she lives for life to be. Green-eyed lady feels life I never see, setting suns and lonely lovers free. swept lady rules the night, the waves, the sand. Green-eyed lady, ocean lady, child of nature, friend of man. Green-eyed lady, passion lady, dressed in love, she lives for life to be. Green-eyed lady feels life I never see, setting suns and lonely lovers free. Cut me down with those angry eyes. You won't believe that I am not the same as you. Now I can't conceive, oh Lord, of what it is you're trying to do. With those angry eyes, well I bet you wish you could cut me down with those angry eyes. What a shot you could be if you could shoot at me with those angry eyes. looking at me with those angry eyes. You and I must stop to realize blindness binds us together in a false disguise. Can you see me through those angry eyes? So your brother's bound and gagged, and they've chained him to a chair. Won't you please come to Chicago just to sing? In a land that's known as freedom, how can such a thing be fair? Won't you please come to Chicago for the help that we can bring? We can change the world. We arrange the world. It's dying to get better. Politicians, sit yourselves down. There's nothing for you here. Won't you please come to Chicago for a ride? Don't ask Jack to help you, 'cause he'll turn the other ear. Won't you please come to Chicago, or else join the other side? We can change the world. We arrange the world. It's dying. If you believe in justice, it's dying. If you believe in freedom, it's dying. Living his own life, it's dying. Rules and regulations, who needs them? Open up the door. Somehow people must be free. I hope the day comes soon. Won't you please come to Chicago, show your face? From the bottom of the ocean to the mountains of the moon. Won't you please come to Chicago? No one else can take your place. We can change the world. We arrange the world. It's dying. If you believe in justice, it's dying. If you believe in freedom, it's dying. Let him live his own life, yeah. It's dying. Rules and regulations, who needs them? Open up the door.
Yes, we can. I swear it's true. It really is. It takes a lot of work, but it's possible, and we really don't have any alternatives. That last was Graham Nash, Chicago, marking the anniversary on this date in 1969 when then Chicago 8 co-defendant Bobby Seale was gagged and bound during his trial for the police riot That's right. He and 7 others were charged for the police riot on demonstrators at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. We heard from the top an interesting little mix. We heard Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders, The Game of Love, and A Groovy Kind of Love. I forget whose birthday it was from that group, but that's why we played it. And the Ronettes, Be My Baby. But after that, we heard 2 versions of one song and 3 of another that show a very interesting little dynamic in the music marketplace, and sort of some sea changes in terms of marketing that are worth probing. We heard the Marvelettes, Please Mr. Postman, and then the Beatles, Please Mr. Postman. Same song. Not written by the Beatles. Then we heard the Shirelles. It was titled Mama Said, Baby, It's You. But actually, same song, Beatles, Baby, It's You. And then the group Smith, Baby, It's You, like a decade and a half later. I don't know, I'm thinking about, I don't remember who used to spend the most money on records back in the late 50s, early 60s, if it was teenage boys or teenage girls or preteens. I don't remember. But imagining that it was white teenage girls for a moment, first identifying with the Ronettes, with the Marvelettes and the Shirelles, and then either being marketed to or somehow bringing you to identifying with the Beatles instead, or being attracted to, pulled from that earlier identification. I don't know. I need to do some research on that. It struck me a couple of times, and this time it has my attention. Anyway, so that's what we heard. We also heard 3 from the Supremes, You Can't Hurry Love, In and Out of Love, and I'm Living in Shame, and Sugarloaf, Green-Eyed Lady, closing that with Loggins and Messina's Angry Eyes, and then, of course, Graham Nash and Chicago. Well, it was also on this date in 1929 that the stock market crash, the one that took place in 1929, not the one that took place in 2008, took place, and we are going to probe that with this piece right now. Where are we? It's right here. From BBC. I'm going to play just some of it, and then we're going to play some things from 2008. This is CPRmetro.org, community progressive radio for the metropolitan New York area and the world. And you're inside the CPR Morning Show with Don DeBar. That's me. This is not it. Hold on, wrong piece. You know what? Let's go to the stock market piece. Was here, right? That is, here we go. Sorry about that. Oopsie-doo. Hold on, we got to go back here. And we got to, boy, I'm hitting all kinds of bad buttons. What is this? Hold on. Okay, here we go.
That sense of there is no limit, and that all this expansion, this success, this elan, we're not really going to have to pay for it. Now, of course, that didn't turn out to be true. You could see the crash. Why do you think they called it the crash? I mean, it's really an airborne collapse metaphor. You can't crash if you're never left the ground. And it's not like a crack up where you're on the ground and you collide into something else. Rather, it's, the plane fell.
The 20s had been so prosperous in so many places, not in the countryside. The farming industry was in very bad shape in the 1920s. But certainly in the cities, it was very prosperous. People were making fortunes on the stock market. And then all of a sudden, poof, it went. I mean, economists, very serious economists, had been saying that we'd reached a new level, a new plateau of prosperity in this country, and we were never going to go back. And then the crash happened.
All through the summer of 1929, there had been ominous rumblings. For months, unemployment had been rising. Automobile sales and department store revenues had fallen off sharply. Across the South and West, farms were failing in record numbers. And still on Wall Street, the delirious optimism continued, undimmed. On August 27, 1929, the Dow Jones average reached its all-time peak as an army of frenzied buyers descended on New York, desperate not to miss a single day's trading, swamping the hotels, camping out on the street in front of the stock exchange, and in the tiny graveyard of Trinity Church on Broadway, where Alexander Hamilton lay buried.
What caused the crash of 29 was excess speculation. What had happened was that the American economy as a whole had begun to cool starting in 1928, and the Wall Street economy disconnected from the underlying real economy and became a speculative bubble. And this fueled this speculation that just took off and took off and took off until, again, one day somebody woke up and said, this has gone too far. There's an old story about Bernard Baruch, that he had his shoes shined every morning by the same shoe shine boy, and one morning the shoe shine boy gave him a stock tip. And Baruch went to his office, called up his broker, and said, sell me out. And shoe shine boys are giving stock tips, it's time to get out.
As summer turned to fall, the mood changed. As the stock market dipped, then rose, then lurched downwards again, investors grew increasingly uneasy. In September, an economist named Roger Babson sent a wave of fear rippling through Wall Street when he warned that sooner or later a crash is coming, and it may be terrific. But most experts brushed away any concerns. Stock prices, one man declared, have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. And then the bottom fell out. On Wednesday, October 23rd, 1929, the first waves of panicky selling began to drive down the price of blue-chip stocks, like Westinghouse and General Electric. The following morning, the fear turned to panic, and brokers began unloading margin accounts at record speed. Stock prices plummeted sickeningly across the board, spurring the rush of sell orders from terrified speculators still more. As anguished shrieks rose up from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, the visitors' gallery was cleared. In less than 2 hours, nearly $10 billion invested in stocks was simply wiped out. Outside on the street, crowds massed 6 deep in front of the stock exchange, while hundreds more stood in shocked silence on the steps of Federal Hall. Newspapers would later try to describe the uncanny murmuring sound that echoed off the stone facades of the financial district that morning. It was a collective moan of horror and grief, and stunned disbelief, rising up from thousands of ruined, frightened men. The biggest crowds gathered outside the house of Morgan, desperately hoping for a miracle. Cheers broke out when word came that a consortium of bankers had agreed to pump hundreds of millions of dollars into the stock exchange to shore up the faltering market. Word spread that once again, the day had been saved by the house of Morgan. But the day had not been saved. On Friday, with the market apparently stabilized, the banks withdrew their funds. The following Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, known forever after as Black Tuesday, another tidal wave of selling hit the exchange, and this time, no one came to the rescue.
Nothing could stop it, and just people wanted out. And this was in the fall. Most crashes tend to be in the fall. And I think, again, it's human psychology. You tend to be more cautious in the fall. I mean, the speculations of summer that seem so brilliant, and suddenly when the chill winds of October come, you wonder if there's such a good idea, and you try to get out. And if too many people do that at once, that it causes the market to drop, which causes more people to want to get out, and suddenly, the snowball rolls down the hill.
Hour after hour, the market continued its descent into chaos and pandemonium, as stock prices simply collapsed under the torrent of panicked selling. And desperate brokers fought and screamed and trampled one another to get out.
16 million shares traded that day, which seems like nothing today because we trade 16 million shares in the first 5 seconds of the business day. But the trading record set on the day of the crash, the 16 million shares, was not vested until 1969. It was 40 years before the New York Stock Exchange traded more shares than it traded on the day of the crash. The tickers did not stop running until 7:45, when the market had closed at 3:30, I guess.
In the worst single day in the history of the New York Stock Exchange, the market lost $14 billion in value, bringing the week's loss to more than $30 billion, 10 times more than the entire annual budget of the federal government, and far more than the United States had spent during all of World War I. Worst hit in the short run were the thousands of small investors who, believing that everyone could be rich, had bought stock on margin, sometimes borrowing as much as 90% of its book value. In a matter of hours, in some cases minutes, they had lost everything: their life savings, their houses, and their dreams. Financiers who had not been wiped out tried to put a brave face on things, insisting there was no cause for alarm. Prudent investors are now buying stocks in huge quantities, John Jacob Raskob told the New York Times, and will profit handsomely when this hysteria is over.
Wednesday, October 30th, 1929. Mr. Raskob was asked if he believed that the decline in the stock market would have great effects on business. He answered that he did not believe the effects would be other than temporary, lasting probably 2 or 3 months, and that he did not believe that the effects would be drastic in other than luxury industries. The New York Times.
But others feared the worst. The present week, one newspaper editor declared, has witnessed the greatest stock market catastrophe of all times. It would take a decade and a half for the American economy to fully recover.
I think the reason the crash lives on in the American folk memory, although there aren't many people alive today who were adults when the crash happened in almost 70 years ago now, but what followed the crash, the Great Depression, which permanently scarred the American psyche, and we remember the crash as the beginning of the Great Depression, although in fact the two had nothing to do with each other, or very little. But that's why I think the crash became such a benchmark, because it was this very sharp line between the prosperity and the giddy cocktail party of the 1920s and the awful depression of the 1930s, and the bread lines and the apple sellers and the bonus riots and what have you.
Yes, indeed. That was 84 years ago today. And, do folks learn from these things? A little reminiscent. These are your wake-up call news headlines for Tuesday, September 16th, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning. In another unnerving day for Wall Street, the markets yesterday suffered their worst losses since the attacks of 2001, leaving government officials scrambling to prevent the financial crisis from spreading. This according to the New York Times this morning. By the end of the day, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 504.48 points, or 4.4%, as a record volume of more than 8 billion shares traded hands on the New York Stock Exchange. It was the biggest decline since September 17, 2001, the day the markets reopened after the collapse of the World Trade Center towers. Today, Asian stock markets and currencies sustained heavy losses amid investor jitters over the turmoil in the U.S. financial industry. Japanese and South Korean exchanges bore the brunt of the selling after those markets were closed for a holiday yesterday. They dropped 4.95% and 6.1% respectively. Analysts expressed fear that the bottom may not yet have been hit. Kenichi Hirano, operating officer at Tachibana Securities, said, quote, "Nobody thinks that financial concerns have been fully factored into U.S. stocks," close quote. Meanwhile, European stocks slumped for a second day today, extending yesterday's session's meltdown as worries about the state of the financial sector in the U.S. continued to batter shares there. Almost immediately after the open, the Dow Jones Stocks 600 index lost 1.5% of its value after losing 3.5% yesterday. After the U.S. markets closed, Fitch Ratings, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's cut their credit ratings on American insurance giant AIG. Standard & Poor's also downgraded Washington Mutual. The markets will be closely watching for earnings reports from Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley later this week. Meanwhile, President Bush, seeking to reassure the public and investors that markets remain sound, said, quote, "In the long run, I am confident that our capital markets are flexible and resilient and can deal with these adjustments," close quote. These are your wake-up call news headlines for Monday, September 22nd, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning. Wall Street, according to the Wall Street Journal, is dead. The Federal Reserve, in an attempt to prevent the crisis on Wall Street from infecting its two premier institutions, took the extraordinary measure last night of agreeing to convert investment banks Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs into traditional bank holding companies. With the move, Wall Street, as it has long been known, a coterie of independent brokerage firms that buy and sell securities, advise clients, and are less regulated than old-fashioned banks, will cease to exist. Its two most precious institutions will now come under the close supervision of national bank regulators. According to the Washington Post, the move was approved by the Fed with unusual haste. It gives Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley greater latitude to borrow from the Fed and access to stable sources of funding like deposits from ordinary people and businesses, in exchange for accepting regulation by the Fed that will restrict what sorts of business activities they can engage in. The conversion of investment banks into the kind of banking companies that were once their rivals will have, according to this report, profound and long-lasting implications for the economy. According to the Post, this development completes a sweeping transformation of Wall Street. Meanwhile, the fate of Lehman Brothers operations remains clouded by controversy, despite the approval by a U.S. bankruptcy judge of the sale of the securities firm's U.S. operations to Britain's Barclays plc. Even as the Barclays sale was approved Saturday, more Lehman clients, employees, and others have objected, claiming they are owed money or assets. At issue is how Lehman transferred corporate funds and client assets from its European operations when the parent firm in New York filed for bankruptcy and later agreed to sell its U.S. brokerage and investment banking operations to Barclays. Meanwhile, the U.S. banking bailout looks as if it is going global too, a move that could raise its cost and intensify scrutiny by Congress and critics. Foreign banks, initially excluded from the plan, lobbied successfully over the weekend to be able to sell bad U.S. mortgage debt owned by their American units to the U.S. Treasury, getting the same treatment as U.S. banks are getting. Locally, struggling Washington Mutual was yesterday reportedly continuing talks with potential buyers and mounting pressure from federal regulators. The bank has drawn interest from potential suitors such as Citigroup Inc., J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Banco Santander S.A. of Spain, according to people familiar with the situation. The Associated Press reports this morning that a Russian Navy... These are your wake-up call news headlines for Tuesday, September 30th, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning.
The House sent the Bush administration's $700 billion rescue package to defeat yesterday, a stunning turn of events that revealed political divisions. The Dow plunged about 780 points as fears grew that more banks could fail. The Nikkei index followed Wall Street lower, ending down 4.1%, but several Asian indices and European markets pared losses amid rising rate cut hopes. The fatal no votes to the financial package came from a strange bedfellows coalition of lawmakers, from the most conservative to the most liberal members of the House, with a large number of representatives from low-income districts angry that Wall Street seems to be getting handouts, while people getting tossed out of homes would get minimal aid. According to the Wall Street Journal this morning, one common strand that tied many of the diverse opponents together was a tough re-election fight. 18 of the 21 most vulnerable Republicans up for re-election, and 10 of the 15 Democrats in the closest races voted against the financial package, illustrating the political hazards of bailing out Wall Street without offering equal assistance to taxpayers. Wisconsin first-term Democratic Representative Steve Kagan was among those who voted against the plan. "It doesn't do anything for my constituents," he said after the vote. Mr. Kagan's Republican challenger, John Gard, had already begun running ads calling the plan a, quote, bailout to Wall Street billionaires, close quote. The ad said, "They break the rules, and Congress hands them your money." These are your wake-up call news headlines for Wednesday, October 1st, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning.
As much as we might wish the situation were different, our country is not facing a choice between government action and the smooth functioning of the free market. We're facing a choice between action and the real prospect of economic hardship for millions of Americans.
That was President Bush yesterday, addressing the nation before markets reopened after Monday's record losses on Wall Street. He called on Congress to hurry up and pass his proposed $700 billion bailout plan for Wall Street.
For the financial security of every American, Congress must act. My administration will continue to work closely with leaders of both parties on Capitol Hill. I appreciate their determined efforts. Our economy is depending on decisive action from the government. The sooner we address the problem, the sooner we can get back on the path of growth and job creation. This is what elected leaders owe the American people, and I'm confident we'll deliver. Thank you.
Monday's vote against the bailout rested upon the votes of 23 members of the House of Representatives, with the final vote at 228 to 205. A decisive factor in the tally were 28 no votes coming from 18 of the 21 most vulnerable Republicans and 10 of the 15 most vulnerable Democrats in next month's elections. The defeat for Bush's plan came after millions of emails, reportedly running more than 80% against the bailout, poured into Washington, with the sheer volume crashing the congressional website. All in all, a 2-to-1 majority of Republicans walked away from the Bush proposal, joined by 40% of House Democrats. Nevertheless, Republican John McCain and Democrat Barack Obama both supported the measure, and both are urging Congress to adopt a similar measure as soon as possible. This was Senator Obama speaking yesterday.
To the Democrats and Republicans who opposed this plan yesterday, I say, step up to the plate. Do what's right for this country.
Meanwhile, Green Party presidential candidate Cynthia McKinney last week rolled out her own plan to rescue the economy. She emphasized first that the bleeding at the bottom had to stop, and that means protecting homeowners from foreclosure, both in the short and long term.
Last week and this week, I put out a 14-point plan that I think would address the financial crisis that our country is experiencing, and immediately some things that the Congress could do in order to address the concerns of average ordinary citizens in our country. First of all, we need a moratorium on foreclosures. We need to renegotiate all adjustable rate mortgages into 30 or 40-year loans. We need to eliminate all adjustable rate mortgages. We need to eliminate all predatory lending.
Unlike Obama or McCain, McKinney has a concrete proposal to recover for the public the benefits of public investment to repair the financial system, benefits in both the financial and public policy spheres.
We should also make sure that the Federal Reserve should indeed be federal. And so therefore, the policy that I recommend is that we nationalize the Federal Reserve and establish a publicly owned banking system so that the government is the issuer of our currency and the debt that is incurred is to the American people. All lending is done for the benefit of the public and social good and not to the benefit of private financiers.
McKinney's 14-point plan can be seen at her campaign's website at www.runcynthiarun.org. These are your wake-up call news headlines for Friday, October 10th, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning. Well, the experts are now calling it a crash. According to this morning's Wall Street Journal, the definition of a crash in the stock market is a 20% decline in a single day or over a period of several days. By that measure, yesterday's decline, the 11th largest in percentage terms in the history of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, put the stock market in a crash as stocks fell for the 7th straight trading day, pulling the market down more than 20% over that period. On its way down, the index broke through another milestone, closing below 9,000 for the first time since 2003 at 8579.19. The 1929 crash is generally acknowledged as the kickoff to the Great Depression. It began with back-to-back declines of 12.8 and 11.7%. The year 1987 brought another crash with a loss of 22.6% in one day. But there is a longer-term trend that is becoming visible to investors and is apparently a bit more troubling to them. Since 1 year ago yesterday, the Dow has lost nearly 40% of its value. The week's relentless sell-off has been driven by deepening fears about the banking system and the spillover effects it may have on the rest of the economy. Investors were shaken yesterday by a Standard & Poor's report raising the possibility that General Motors' debt will be downgraded. GM's stock fell 31%, closing at its lowest price since 1950, according to data from the University of Chicago. There were even some reports last evening that both GM and Ford could be facing bankruptcy. In Asia today, markets plunged again. Tokyo's Nikkei stock average ended down 9.6%, while the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index was down 7%. European trading this morning showed the DJ Eurostoxx 50 Index down 8%, the FTSE 100 in London down 6.2%, the CAC 40 in Paris down 7.2%, and the DAX in Frankfurt down 7.9%. Trading in U.S. index futures suggest the Dow will fall more than 2% at the opening bell today. The market rout in the U.S. is rapidly wiping out vast amounts of wealth, casting a pall over households and businesses. U.S. stocks, measured by the Dow's Wilshire 5000, shed $872 billion in market value yesterday alone and $2.5 trillion over the last 7 trading sessions, with an $8.4 trillion loss from 1 year ago. Although the specific economic problems are different than in the 1970s or the 1930s, according to the Wall Street Journal, the markets are now behaving in a similar way. They rally, sometimes for extended periods, but eventually give back most of the gains as investor faith in a recovery fades. According to a group of 52 economists in the latest Wall Street Journal forecasting survey, the U.S. economy has sunk into a recession. Bruce Fabry of BNP Paribas, referring to the worsening credit crunch, said, "We're in the middle of a very dark tunnel. Each day, we see another crack in the system. Those cracks are reportedly quickly adding up. On average, the 52 economists surveyed now expect U.S. gross domestic product to contract in the third and fourth quarters of this year, as well as in the first quarter of next year. This is the first time that survey forecasts for those periods have turned negative. If the predictions bear out, it would mark the first time that U.S. GDP has contracted for 3 consecutive quarters in more than a half-century. These are your wake-up call news headlines for Monday, October 13th, 2008. I'm Don DeBar. Good morning. The Washington Post reports this morning that governments around the world took unprecedented steps yesterday to try to rescue the global financial system, with major European economic powers unveiling a united plan to prevent further bank failures, while Australia and New Zealand moved to calm panicked investors by guaranteeing deposits before stock markets opened in Asia. With the newly decisive moves, other major economic powers are catching up to or surpassing the U.S. in sculpting a response to the crisis, which crashed stock markets last week and is threatening a broader collapse of the world's interconnected banking system. Although Congress has given the Treasury Department wide authority to intervene in financial markets with a $700 billion bailout plan, officials are still trying to figure out how best to execute it. This morning, Assistant Treasury Secretary Neil Kashkari, who has been appointed to orchestrate the bailout, is scheduled to speak in Washington on the giant rescue package. In addition to Australia and New Zealand, the United Arab Emirates guaranteed all bank deposits with local banks yesterday, following moves by some European countries, including Ireland and Germany, to remove or raise the limit on deposit insurance. The U.S. has already increased guarantees for banking deposits from $100,000 to $250,000. European dissent over how to handle the crisis has given way to a unified response. At an emergency summit, the 15 nations that use the euro agreed yesterday to offer government guarantees for troubled banks trying to raise funds, and pledged that public money would be used aggressively to make sure that no European bank is allowed to fail. Europe's promise to temporarily guarantee bank debt goes beyond what U.S. officials have promised. The euro jumped 1.1% against the dollar in Asian trading late yesterday, and markets appear to be responding today. Banking stocks led equity markets higher today in Europe and Asia after the European leaders announced their plans. At the opening, the FTSE 100 index in London rose 5.4%, and markets in Paris and Frankfurt were up. Also, trading in Standard & Poor's 500 index futures suggested Wall Street stocks could gain as much as 6% at the opening here. U.S. bond markets are closed today for the federal holiday.
One, two, three, do it.
The first time the Dow Jones Industrial Average passed the 13,000 mark.
Another milestone for the market, 14,000 on the money.
Record-breaking kickoff to the fourth quarter as the Dow Jones Industrial Average closes at a new all-time record high.
Let's celebrate,
We take a buck, we shoot it full of steroids, and we call it leverage.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not in a crisis.
I think so. I mean, look, it's one thing to look beforehand. It's one thing to say, woohoo. But now, the deed has been done. Stearns is fine. Do not take your money out. This is real. Look, if there's one takeaway other than a plus 400 somewhere, Bear Stearns is not in trouble. I mean, if anything, they're more likely to be taken over. Don't move your money from Bear. That's just being silly.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
The closing numbers on the markets today, at one point the market fell as if down a well, over 700 points.
Apple shares are just getting hammered this morning.
We're down by between 3 and 4.5% generally across these markets. Let's talk about the speed with which we are watching this market deteriorate. We're red everywhere, essentially, down by 4-5%.
We're down over 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%.
The stock market is now down 21%.
Because we're now down 43%.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
This is like having a pine cone shoved in my hand.
Almost everything there completely wiped out. And the NASDAQ, everything and more has been completely wiped out.
The Dow traders are standing there watching in amazement, and I don't blame them.
That's not right. How can the price be going down? Something's wrong.
Their estimation was that by 2 o'clock that afternoon, $5.5 trillion would have been drawn out of the money market system of the United States, would have collapsed the entire economy of the United States, and within 24 hours the world economy would have collapsed.
Was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
What?
Working the phone say a lot of their customers are freaked out waiting to see how low the Dow will go. Please no.
What started in America last year has now spread to every part of the world.
We're down 9% today. The Xetra DAX over in Frankfurt is down by 9%. The Paris market down by 9%. Austria, which was briefly suspended earlier on in the day, is down by nearly 11%.
Cicero was right. We're in the last days of this country surviving.
Steve Leisman, Treasury runs the printing presses to print the dollars. Some of the dollars go into the Fed. Fed takes the dollars, buys Treasury bonds that the Treasury issues to raise money. Money goes back into the Fed. Isn't this all kind of one big Ponzi scheme?
Sophisticated term for that, Dennis. We call it monetizing the debt.
Will the Federal Reserve monetize this debt? The Federal Reserve will not monetize the debt.
You should have taken him out the back and shot him a long time ago.
Aye, aye, Captain. Money's a bitch that never sleeps. She's jealous. And if you don't pay close attention, you wake up in the morning, she might be gone forever. Ain't that the truth? It's clear as a bell to those that pay attention. Get dressed. I'll show you my charts.
Yes, indeed. That's some of the sound from 2008. It's 5 years ago, last month and this month. On this, the 84th anniversary of what they call Black Tuesday, this Tuesday, the 29th day of October, 2013. This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. From the Metropolitan New York area to the world and beyond, wherever you may be. You're inside the CPR Morning Show with Don DeBar. That is I. And it was on this date in 1956 that Israel invaded Egypt, moving towards the Suez Canal. They were soon joined by French and British forces, and that was triggered by the nationalization of the Suez Canal by Egypt. The head of state, Gamal Abdel Nasser, took that step in July of 1956, and it had been the culmination of a decade or more of pressure, including from the Egyptian military, to nationalize what then belonged to Britain, this rather valuable resource, and use it for the benefit of the Egyptian people, since it is, after all, on Egyptian land. This is CPRmetro.org, and we're going to do this little piece from BBC about that, called The Other Side of Suez, and then we're going to speak with Deb Sweet at the bottom of the hour.
This is a story of how the government of the United Kingdom decided to attack an Arab nation. Of how, afraid its oil supplies were under threat, it embarked on a strategy of regime change. Of how Britain deliberately bypassed the United Nations. And of how a British Prime Minister led the nation to war based on suspect intelligence. But this isn't Iraq 2003. This is Egypt, 1956. These are British paratroopers fighting on the orders of British Prime Minister Anthony Eden. He has gambled on a war in a desperate bid to destroy Egypt's new young president, Gamal Abdel Nasser.
I'm utterly convinced that the action we have taken is right.
This is a war over who will run this Egyptian waterway, the Suez Canal, and the vital oil supplies which are transported through it. Suez is a crisis which will push the world to the brink of nuclear catastrophe.
That moment I did think this is really going to be the Third World War.
In Britain, we know Suez is a war based on a Prime Minister's lie, a lie which destroys him.
The MI6 sexed up their intelligence.
But seen from the other side, Suez is a story of how a small, poor Arab country defended itself against the Western world and won.
People will defend their country, they will defend their land.
July the 26th, 1956. It is a warm evening as Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser prepares to address his people. His country is in ferment. Only 7 days before, the young president had suffered a humiliating blow when the West sabotaged his key plan to lift Egypt out of poverty. Now, 200,000 people gather to hear their president's response. But unknown to the crowd, 30 people stationed on the banks of the Suez Canal are listening for a password, a Frenchman's name hidden in Nasser's speech.
Have their radio on to follow the speech, waiting for the password, delicips.
When they hear this word, their president has told them to storm the offices of the Suez Canal Company. As jubilant Egyptians celebrate, Nasser heads to a movie theater to relax. He doesn't know that in London, Anthony Eden has already decided to have him killed. Egypt, cradle of ancient civilizations, and in the post-war era, strategically the most valuable country in the Arab world. Thanks to this, the Suez Canal, which carries oil to the economies of the West. The company that runs the canal is largely owned by Egypt's old colonial masters, Britain and France, and is staffed by Europeans.
We consider the Suez Canal Company is a country inside our country, a state inside our state.
Egypt sees virtually nothing of the tens of millions of dollars the canal earns each year. Feelings of resentment are growing.
Imagine somebody, a foreigner in your country, and he gives you nothing. He takes everything and gives you nothing. Is that justice?
In February 1955, Egypt's young president Gamal Abdel Nasser meets British Prime Minister Anthony Eden for the first time. The two men dislike one another from the start.
The impression of President Nasser about Anthony Eden was that he was a small churcher and not, committed with imposing the British point of view on the other side.
For Eden, Egypt remains part of Britain's sphere of influence in the Middle East. Although nominally independent since 1922, Egyptian kings have dutifully done what British prime ministers have told them to do.
Eden lived in the legend of the empire, but the world was different. Eden didn't realize the change in the balance of power.
Anthony Eden is every inch the Conservative Prime Minister. Educated at Eton and Oxford, he was Foreign Secretary during the war and is Winston Churchill's hand-picked successor. But in Nasser, Eden encounters a new kind of Arab leader. He is part of a new generation of Egyptians determined to secure real independence for their country.
الحرية، حق تقرير المصير، القضاء على الاستعمار، عدم الانحياز، التعايش السلمي الإيجابي.
Nasser is one of a group of officers who had overthrown the playboy King Farouk in 1952. 2 years later, Nasser had shown Britain that Egypt would not be pushed around. An aggressive guerrilla campaign forces the British to evacuate 88,000 soldiers from the biggest base in the world on the banks of the Suez Canal.
At that time, what was most important is real independence and to get free, really free, by evacuating the troops.
There was an operation against the British troops parallel to the negotiations. When the negotiations go in a smooth way, we ease the resistance. When the British delegation became stubborn, we intensify the resistance.
By the spring of 1956, Egypt is free of British troops. With his country moving away from its colonial past, Nasser embarks on an ambitious plan to transform the lives of his people.
Egypt was very much backward. 0.5% of the people were possessing merely about 75% of the fortune.
We had one of the lowest standards of life. The majority of Egyptians were in streets with naked feet.
Nasser's solution is to build a huge dam on the Nile at Aswan, which will provide water for agriculture and electricity. It will be the biggest dam in the world and will lift Egypt out of poverty once and for all.
This project of the high dam will provide Egypt with water to double the farms and will give power, electricity to industrialize Egypt.
But Nasser needs $400 million to realize his dream, an enormous sum in the 1950s. His first port of call is the West.
In the beginning, Nasser and all the revolutionaries have no problem with the Americans. On the contrary, we can get help of the Americans.
The World Bank, backed by the United States and Britain, agrees to give him a loan. At this point, Nasser's relations with the Americans seem close.
Nasser's favorite film is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. He really loves that film. And Washington arranges to send out a special copy of the film with Arabic subtitles.
By 1956, Egypt's glamorous young president is confident his plans to develop Egypt are on course. But Nasser has another problem, which will destroy his plans.
As the sporadic fighting takes on the proportions of full-scale war, dead and captured arms are the order of the day as both Arabs and Israelis put their nations on a full mobilization basis. Bitterness on both.
Nasser fought in the Arab armies defeated by the Israelis in 1948. Since then, the Middle East's newest state has fought a border war with its Arab neighbors. Israel's very existence is an affront to Nasser.
Nasser was at that time a great danger and enemy. Very soon it was clear that he aspires to be the unifier of the Arab world.
Nasser made great speeches. He was handsome, he was eloquent, he carried fire with him. It was a catastrophe.
The Israelis see themselves surrounded by enemies. Fearing attack, they are desperately trawling the world for arms.
The Americans were very strict. They wouldn't supply us arms. So did Great Britain. And I thought that the only opening we have is France.
France agrees to supply Israel with the Jewish state's first jet fighters. To Nasser, it looks like an increasingly powerful enemy is at the gates.
The French are giving Israel arms. I am confronting a situation that may destruct my country. Should I stand still?
So Nasser decides he too will look abroad for arms. As with the loan for his dam, his first call is on the United States.
Nasser, from the first day of the revolution, asked the Americans, I need arms. Our army needs arms. And he asked the British the same question. Neither the British nor the Americans gave a response to that.
But this is the 1950s, the depths of the Cold War. The West and the Soviet Union are locked in a battle for influence across the world. NASA knows that if Washington says no, then maybe Nikita Khrushchev in Moscow will say yes.
Egypt flexes its military muscles with a display of arms newly acquired from Russia and its satellites.
The first arms from the Soviet bloc land in Alexandria on the 27th of September 1955. The deal is a triumph for Khrushchev, who is keen to extend communist influence in the region.
He didn't expect that countries would be communist immediately. He was willing to wait. Egypt was the first great success for him. This was for Khrushchev a sign of the kind of relationship he could have with many of the large states in the developing world. And for the West, this was a very dramatic achievement.
But Nasser is not in Khrushchev's pocket, as many in the West fear.
No, Nasser has never been a communist, never at all.
We are a believer. I am a believer. I believe in God. Nasser used to believe in God. Nasser used to pray. The communists don't believe in God. They don't pray.
Nasser was an anti-communist. The Soviets knew full well he was an anti-communist. They knew that he was putting communists in jail. He didn't let those communists out of jail when his relations improved with the Soviet Union. But both sides made a pragmatic decision.
But in Eden's view, Nasser does look like a communist stooge. The Prime Minister and the Americans decide to punish him for cutting a deal with the Soviets. Their response is to mount a covert campaign against Nasser, codenamed Omega.
Omega includes propaganda that provide information to journalists, to broadcasters, that say Nasser really isn't a very good person. Can you please report this? Omega also includes sanctions against Egypt. It includes blocking military aid to Egypt.
Then, as part of this undeclared war, a secret decision is taken to slow down financing on the Aswan Dam. Anthony Eden and the U.S. Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, are behind the new strategy.
I think Dulles was angry with Nasser for having almost flaunted his independence. I really think that Dulles believed that Nasser's behavior was almost a personal affront to him.
In London, Eden's mistrust of Nasser is increased by some mysterious intelligence reports which have just landed on his desk. They are from an MI6 contact known as Lucky Break. Lucky Break tells Eden that Nasser is a pawn of the Soviet Union and the Egyptian people will welcome his overthrow.
From reading the reports that MI6 is giving to British officials and giving to the Americans, I think they are taking a few sources and they are sexing them up. No one individual could have provided the information that Nasser was so close to the Soviets, that Nasser was so vulnerable to being overthrown, if not assassinated, because that was not true. That simply was not true.
But Lucky Break is telling the British Prime Minister what he wants to hear.
The firm attitude that the government have adopted is not a...
Foreign Office Minister Anthony Nutting is one of the first to realize just how far the Prime Minister is now prepared to go.
Over an open line, having just said, "It's me," but we started a violent argument on the telephone, and he was really violent in that conversation, and ended up by shouting at me, "I don't want Nasser neutralized, I want him destroyed."
There were two people with all conversation, Eden and Nutting. Nutting said subsequently that Eden had said murder.
Operatives within MI6 take the Prime Minister at his word.
What you have is a Thomas Becket situation where Eden says, "Will someone not make me rid of this turbulent Nasser?"
I'm not exaggerating. Nearly every month, there was an attempt against Nasser from the West. Either French or British or Israelis. Nearly every month.
As Nasser was making a public speech in Alexandria, a young man fired 8 bullets at him. All missed the premier, but 2 of his aides were wounded.
The plans just are wildly out of control. Putting nerve gas into the ventilation system of Nasser's headquarters, trying to put poison into Nasser's coffee, trying at some point to possibly shoot Nasser. If Lucky Break did not exist in 1956, he would have had to be created to justify their extravagant plans to get rid of Nasser.
On the 19th of July 1956, the Egyptian ambassador to the USA is called into the State Department. He is informed that the financing of the Aswan Dam is cancelled. If the West can't assassinate Nasser, then they will destroy his dreams to develop Egypt. To add insult to injury, President Nasser only learns of the decision from the radio news.
I was surprised by the insultive attitude which the refusal was declared. Not by the refusal itself, but the insultive attitude and which meant humiliation.
Now Nasser has two choices. He can meekly accept the West's punishment, or he can fight. 3 days later, he gathers his most trusted lieutenants together.
President Nasser ordered me to bring him the file of the Suez Canal. And he told me, what about nationalizing this canal? I got surprised the first time. But internally in myself, I got proud to think about this action at that time. I felt proud.
Nasser calculates that the Aswan Dam can still be built if the tolls of ships transiting the Suez Canal come to Egypt and not the British and French-controlled Suez Canal Company. But Nasser knows that nationalization is a huge risk. He will have to physically seize control of the canal itself. The next day, he is scheduled to make his first speech since his humiliation at the hands of the West. All Egypt waits for his response. The speech is an anticlimax.
It was all rhetoric, and the reaction of the Egyptians was, oh, he hasn't got the balls to really stand up to the United States.
But afterwards, Nasser orders an old military colleague, Mahmoud Yunus, to mastermind the dangerous job of taking physical control of the canal. Yunus selects 30 men he can trust.
Yunus emphasized that if this piece of news is released, then it will surely not succeed.
3 days later, Nasser is scheduled to speak publicly again. The men know their cue for action is a password hidden in the president's speech, which will be carried on Egyptian radio. The password is the name of the man who designed the canal, Ferdinand de Lesseps. As they wait, they still don't know if their president has definitely decided to take the gamble.
My feelings were a combination of first fear and, of course, the sense of responsibility is tremendous.
In the stifling July heat, Nasser makes his way to Alexandria's Manshia Square, where he is to deliver his speech. Once again, his people wait to hear if he will respond to the West's denial of funding for the Aswan Dam. At 9 p.m., Nasser climbs the podium. The speech is long. Nasser catalogues the centuries of humiliations the Egyptians have suffered at the hands of the West.
يعني غرور وتحكم. احنا رفضنا ان احنا نقبل هذا السيطرة.
His tone is measured but angry.
هل يكون الاستقلال او التحكم الاقتصادي
On the canal, Ezzat and his men are in position, ready for the signal. But after 2 hours, it still hasn't come. Then, the moment of truth. At the signal, Yunus, Ezzat and their men simultaneously break into the 4 main offices of the Suez Canal Company. In Alexandria, Nasser leaves nothing to chance. He repeats the password a total of 14 times. In the Canal Company headquarters, Yunus informs the European employees that the company has been nationalized. He is polite, but he is also armed. Attempts at sabotage or obstruction by the employees will not be tolerated.
They were very astonished and afraid. We tried to calm them down, and we asked them to continue work as if nothing has happened.
Back in Alexandria, Nasser now reveals to the world what the employees of the Suez Canal Company have just discovered. Across Egypt, there is pandemonium.
It was a bombshell, of course, absolute bombshell. We listened to this thing, nobody expected.
People were rejoicing in the street. I celebrated with all Egyptians.
لقناة السويس البحرية شركة مساهمة مصرية وحقوق وما عليها من التزامات الهيئات واللجان القائمة حاليا على إدارتها.
The employees of the newly nationalized company do not join in the celebrations.
I remember that some of them said that you do not realize the impact and the reactions from the West, because the West cannot leave this international waterway in incapable hands.
In London, Eden is enjoying post-dinner brandies with military and diplomatic top brass at number 10. When news of Nasser's actions comes through, he is furious.
We all know this is how fascist governments behave. And we all remember, only too well, what the cost can be in giving in to fascism.
A former commanding officer of our battalion described it in his usual blunt way to me. He said that the moment you mentioned the name Nasser, Eden practically got down and chewed the carpet.
But in the United States, initial reaction is less belligerent. Eisenhower dispatches John Foster Dulles to London to calm Eden down. Dulles carries with him a letter from the president.
The letter said that under no circumstances would an American public opinion or American government support use of force in the Middle East.
But Eden has already made his decision.
The next morning, Eisenhower had a cable from Eden stating explicitly that the government had decided that they were going to get rid of Nasser, that this was the only alternative. That was a firm decision. They weren't going to change it. And that was that.
Essentially, the British and French reaction to the Suez crisis encapsulated two principles about which we have heard quite a lot recently. One was regime change, feeling that we must go. The other was preemptive self-defense.
Eden's justification for this is the belief that Nasser is a Soviet puppet, a direct threat to British interests. Lucky Break's intelligence has told him so. But the intelligence is wrong. In Moscow, Nikita Khrushchev knows nothing of Nasser's plans.
When he nationalized the canal, it was a surprise for the Soviet Union also. He didn't take the permission or anything.
Even once he had made this decision, a few days before the announcement. He didn't tell the Soviets. And he didn't tell them for an obvious reason. He knew what their reaction would be. Moscow would tell him, don't do it. The West saw Moscow as the ginger man in the story, as provoking Nasser to be more and more aggressive. In fact, Moscow was doing the opposite.
Meanwhile, in the newly nationalized canal, the atmosphere is tense. Nasser knows that Eden does not expect the Egyptians will be able to run the canal. Critical to its running are the 300 pilots, nearly all European, who guide each ship from one end to the other.
Without these pilots, the traffic will never start. The canal will stop.
We noticed that after the summer leave is over, some did not come back. We also noticed that some are selling their cars, their furniture.
In 14th of September, at 12 o'clock, they declared, we stop work.
7 weeks after nationalization, the British Prime Minister has secretly instructed the pilots to abandon the canal.
It was now an exam in which, if we fail, then also the Suez Canal will be lost.
Egypt's hopes rest on the shoulders of the 26-year-old trainee pilot Ali Nasri, who, with only a fortnight's training, has to take a ship through the canal.
My first vessel was German, and the captain came and said, you are from the new pilots? I said, yes. And this is my first time I have to take a ship alone.
The potential for disaster is huge. The canal is little over 100 meters wide at points. Ali Nasri fears a miscalculation could send his tanker into the banks, blocking the whole canal and proving Eden right.
The feeling of responsibility makes me losing some confidence. I couldn't see the boys. You see the green boys and the red boys. I couldn't see any. But by time, the encouraging of the master, and they start to give orders.
Slowly, his ship moves off down the canal.
My orders I executed immediately. You keep the vessel in the middle, straight. So I start to feel happy, relax. I can see the way the vessel was moving, so I start to feel easy.
Nasri's progress is followed with bated breath on the banks of the canal.
I saw somebody in the road, somebody calling, pilot. Yes, I looked by the glass, I found him, Engineer Yunus by himself, the chairman, standing in the road saying, good luck, go ahead.
14 hours later, a ship piloted by an Egyptian has passed successfully through the canal. Once again, there are celebrations in the streets.
It is beyond any imagination that gave the confidence to the Egyptians that they can do what the whole world thought that they cannot.
But in London, Eden is still determined to build a case for intervention. Removing the pilots is only his opening gambit. Now he decides to overwhelm the inexperienced Egyptians by forcing a gigantic fleet of tankers through the canal.
Now the British had planned a nice little scheme which would demonstrate to the world the Egyptians were incompetent at running the canal. And they would have lots of ships just poised and ready to go through the canal once the pilots had been withdrawn.
Then instead of receiving, say, 20 vessels at Port Said, you receive 30 to make it more difficult for any group to carry on as pilots.
Exhausted, the 36 Egyptian pilots and whatever foreign recruits they can muster work day and night to deny Eden his wish and to keep the canal running.
We were working continuously. President Nasser at that time was on the phone, on the wireless, hour by hour.
The Egyptians succeed in keeping the canal open, despite Eden's best efforts at sabotage. For a second time, the Prime Minister has been foiled.
The whole world was not expecting at all that Egypt would succeed in this severe exam. And some of the Western papers suggested that the Egyptians cultivate the Suez Canal area with potatoes instead of running the Suez Canal.
Eden is frustrated, but Nasser feels vindicated. It is now almost 3 months since nationalization, and the canal is still open for business. It seems Eden's plans to overthrow Nasser and wrestle back control of the canal have failed. The world can see no reason for war. Then, on the 14th of October, 2 visitors from the French Ministry of Defense arrived to see a gloomy Prime Minister at his country retreat, Chequers.
The French had invented the following scenario: that Israel should attack Egypt. Thereupon, Britain and France, who had forces in the neighborhood, should say, we cannot allow this kind of war because it will interfere with the Suez Canal, and therefore we are going to intervene and hold the 2 countries apart.
I happened to be in Paris. So the Minister of Defense called me in and he says, did you ever thought storming over Sinai?
By the way, that's Shimon
and
Peres.
that's how it started.
Eden is enthusiastic about this French plan. Not only will he be able to seize the canal, he sees a way to bring about Nasser's downfall.
If you bomb Egypt, you create panic within the country, you link this to an invasion, the Israeli invasion, and the new government will emerge, and Nasser will be no more.
As Eden is plotting in Britain, the rest of the world is trying to broker a peace deal at the United Nations. Eden has reluctantly sent his Foreign Secretary, Selwyn Lloyd, to meet with the French and Egyptians in New York. To Lloyd's surprise, the talks are going well.
He desperately hoped that he would be able to make real progress in these talks in the United Nations, and was encouraged by the Egyptian Foreign Minister Fawzi's willingness to talk over the subject.
But just as it seems progress is being made, the atmosphere changes.
The attitude of Pinault, the French Foreign Minister, was very ambiguous. From the beginning, he seemed to be prepared to get down to real negotiation. But then, halfway through, he seemed to lose interest entirely, and we wondered what was going on and why.
Eden, anxious that no deal is struck in New York, telephones Lloyd and orders him to abandon the talks immediately. The Foreign Secretary, feeling he might be close to a solution, is exasperated.
Selwyn Lloyd probably thought that it was worthwhile continuing with these discussions. You might say, like Hans Blix thought that he could do with a couple more months of time to decide something very definite about the weapons of mass destruction.
And we're going to stop that there, and I think maybe go to, we're going to get into our segment now with Deb Sweet and talk about some of the things going on in the great wide world today. And there's an awful lot going on. Deb, are you there?
Hey, Don, I'm here.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Let's see. I guess we got a few things we can cover. Let's start with the rally against the NSA on Saturday in Washington.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was the first march of any large significance outside of the Restore the Fourth rally here in New York City on July 4th, which was actually about the same size. At any rate, this was one that started in front of Union Station and then marched to the Capitol reflecting pool. So it was in the nexus of those in charge in Washington and about 20 miles down the road from Fort Meade, Maryland, where the NSA is.
That's right.
You know, it was a beautiful day on Saturday, and a lot of people came, mostly young. I would say predominantly male, although maybe it was pretty mixed. And people were really angry, righteously so. It was put together by this coalition called Stop Watching Us. Their URL is also stopwatching.
Ooh, we lost her. I don't know what happened. Let's try and get her back. That was weird. Anyway, this is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. From the Metropolitan New York area to the world and beyond. You know, it's a one-year anniversary of the Hurricane Sandy hitting New York. I'm wondering if Deb is in Brooklyn. And are you there? We got you back? Deb? Hello. Okay. Okay, let's try again. Let's see what happens. She's typing me something. Oh, her computer died. Aha. Okay, so we're going to wait and maybe we're going to go to the phone and as soon as she calls in, and because apparently she's got computer problems. And anyway, this is CPRmetro.org. We got Bernard White up next. Wondering what happened with Black Agenda Report. For some reason, it wasn't at the various places that I download it from usually, and it still isn't. And I think we have Deb, so let's hang on. And in fact, we do have Deb. Are you there, Deb?
I can hear you, barely.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to balance you hearing me on the phone and the phone not broadcasting my voice, but rather my microphone broadcasting my voice. So
I'll do my best.
Okay, so I guess we could start with, we were starting with the rally, and you mentioned...
Yeah, Saturday. There were, honestly, there were about 1,000 people there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was put together by StopWatching.us, which includes the ACLU, Bill of Rights Defense Committee, Electronic Freedom Foundation. And I would say the people who are concerned with tech freedom and privacy on the internet were the major bulk of people that were there, which included not that many traditional civil liberties groups, to be honest, who showed up, but the electronic privacy people, and then a pretty good dose of libertarian thinkers.
Yeah, I saw that one of the speakers was from the the Electronic Frontier group. I forget the name of that. And
Trevor Tim.
Right, and then there was
there
was also this
Naomi,
broad range.
Naomi Wolf was there.
Yeah, so I actually saw an interview with her, and also the Republican congressman from Michigan, whose name escapes.
Amash.
Yeah, he's
Amash.
Amash.
Yeah.
He was one of the co-sponsors of a piece that almost got through the Congress. Surprising support for it, given the outright opposition by the leadership of both parties to rein in the NSA earlier this year.
I'm just having a little trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, that I was just saying who Amash was and his co-sponsorship of that bill earlier this year to try to rein in the NSA that almost got through, even with the outright opposition of the leaders of both parties.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we're finding out a lot this week. It was pretty interesting to go there under the slogan "Stop Watching Us" and struggle with people to expand the understanding of who the us is, because of course people come with their American prejudices of they're listening to us, meaning we, the people living in this country who are allegedly and supposedly protected by the Fourth Amendment and the First Amendment, and that's very outrageous to people, and it is outrageous. Yeah. But then you find out, it keeps coming out, as Glenn Greenwald has promised, that there are layers and layers of stories here, and it comes out that Angela Merkel's phone has been monitored since 2002. The Bush administration started it. Obama knew about it for the last 5 years, and they're not denying that they knew about it. Spain, Brazil, all over the world, the U.S. is listening to the personal cell phone calls of leaders of the so-called free world and others.
Right.
And so the us is really expansive here. And I went down there with World Can't Wait because we wanted to make the point of what is all this vast surveillance of whole populations for. In this country, it is to keep down protest and dissent, very specifically lining up and vacuuming up all of the information on people who are raising their voices now for use in the future. Mm-hmm. And knowing what the possible repercussions of that are by knowing who's listening to any criticism of the government. So that's very, very significant. But then look also what the U.S. is doing around the world with NSA. It's the biggest listening system in world history that goes along and is part of and supports the biggest military in world history.
Yeah.
We went down with a model M9 Reaper drone, 1/5 the size that we have been part of with Nick Modern of NoDrones.com, building about 18 of these around the country that people can use in political protest of the U.S. dirty wars and the drone wars. So we took it down there, and it was interesting. We had a small sign on it, up 12 feet in the air that said, "Stop U.S. wars and surveillance by drones," and a list of resources for people on all the exposure that's come out in the last 10 days or so about the U.S. drone war. The fact that, number one, the UN, Amnesty, and Human Rights Watch all presented significant evidence that indeed there are a lot of civilians being killed when Obama, the military and the CIA, both drone programs, kill a significant number of civilians in addition to whoever it is Obama thinks he's signing.
Yeah, apparently.
To go after.
Apparently today or tomorrow there's a 9-year-old girl who's going to be in front of Congress who's a victim of one of the drone strikes.
Yes, that's today, and actually some of those folks will be speaking tonight at NYU at a program that starts at 6:30. People can find that through NYU and the Open Society Foundation. And tomorrow, Robert Greenwald's film from Brave New Films that features this family is going to debut online, and you can find that at bravenewfilms.org. It's Wednesday, October 30th, that film is going to start being available, and I think it's really important that people avail themselves of the opportunity, so rare, to hear what's going on in the tribal areas of the world, like in Waziristan. Another new film coming out from Madia Tahir is called Wounds of Waziristan. So people should look for that too. It's all on worldcan'twait.net, our website, and it's an important process where, at last, some journalists are going as close as they can into that area because, of course, journalists are kept out of Waziristan entirely. It's a very contended area where most people, and, I guess in this kind of a society it would be most men, are armed historically because of all that's going on, and that is the very excuse the U.S. uses to signify that people are insurgents, because they're armed. Well, anybody over the age of 18 that's killed in a drone strike is, by definition, labeled by the U.S. as an insurgent because they are a male over 18, unless proved otherwise. And who has the evidence to prove otherwise when these Hellfire missiles literally obliterate bodies? And that was the story with this grandmother who was working in the fields near her grandchildren. And she was just blown up, blown to body parts, and in front of her grandchildren. So these are some of the people that are coming to testify in Congress today. And it's, I think that in itself is historic. Will anything come of it? I don't know, but the young girl that was burned with napalm in Vietnam became a symbol really to a whole generation of the utter illegitimacy of that war in Vietnam. And the same thing should happen here with the people whose lives are literally being blown up by the program of targeted killing.
Right, which has no process other than a decision by the president or someone close to the president that that's a target, and then ordering the strike. And the context that you described is right. You have a situation where if you're a male and you go out unarmed, you get shot. So you carry a gun for self-defense. Now you're a target. Mm-hmm. That's like just another layer of what's being conducted on the ground, essentially, which seems to be a war against the entire population.
Yeah, it's a war against the people, and even, I guess somebody in the U.S. State Department said last week, every time we do a drone strike, he came up with a number, we create 40 to 60 new insurgents, which seems a little ludicrous to me. I'm sure it's much larger than that. We know for a fact that in Pakistan there's very significant protests and anger about the U.S. drone strikes, but of course that's complicated too because the U.S. is providing a huge amount of military support to Pakistan, and no doubt the wink-wink agreement on that is that the government itself of Pakistan is supporting and aiding in the drone strikes, even while there's contention there and there's disagreements between the U.S. and the Pakistan government because it is allegedly, at least, a sovereign country under international law, and the U.S. goes into the countries of Pakistan, Somalia, Yemen, at will. There's no national boundary for U.S. imperialism.
Right. The world is their oyster.
It's something like that. And again, this is very much connected with the NSA surveillance. There was way too much Americanism at that rally. Not just for me, but, in terms of what's necessary in the world. I understand and I feel we will be compelled to defend the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment in particular, which was brought into the Bill of Rights with a lot of struggle after the Constitution was written. That the Fourth Amendment is the one that protects against illegal search and seizure and says that the authorities have to have a warrant to search. So a lot of people had signs Saturday saying, get a warrant if you want to search me. But the biggest signs by both volume and political import were all the Defend the Constitution, and they actually had 100-foot-long banner on which was written the Fourth Amendment, which was very picturesque. And I think that to a point, all that is very important. But if people in that march, and if we think standing on the Constitution is going to protect us, I think that's very weak indeed. In fact, I had arguments on Saturday, and I think rightly so, with people who were saying, the founders would turn over in their grave if they knew about this.
Or they're slaves,
Bullshit.
too. Yeah, they're slaves, too.
What do they think the Constitution was? It was a masterfully worked, somewhat lucky, pasted together document that was a compromise between the needs of the slaveholders in the South and the developing commercial interests of the manufacturers in the North. That's what it was, and
that's right.
All of your listeners know very well that for 80 years or longer, it preserved the inhumanity of all the slaves in the country, without which this wealth would never exist and there wouldn't even be a United States. So don't talk to us about the founders. and their respect for human rights.
I was even surprised yesterday.
It's not just an oversight in a whole; it's the whole thing on which this country was based.
That's right. It's the cloth. I was surprised when we played on the CPR news yesterday. Dennis Kucinich was making, he was tacking that way in his, rhetorically, considerably for him anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that Dennis. I didn't listen to every word of every speech because I was also busy talking to people, but he was the one who brought up the drones and targeted killing, which it was very good to hear that, because there was also a hole in the messaging that this NSA surveillance and spying is mainly of concern and should be, again, to us, interpreted as the people living in this country. My interpretation of us is humanity, people living everywhere, and that our interests are so opposed to what the U.S. is doing, including this modern iteration of NSA spying that has the full backup of, the liberal President Obama. He's adapted to this remarkably well.
The U.S. government is showing that materially because they're targeting people abroad and people here. I mean, how much more clear could it be?
Yeah, but the point is it needs to be in our concern, and then we have to understand the relation between this surveillance. It is not being done because someone at the NSA has a particular hair up about your privacy. That is not the point. The point is the vulnerability and the continuation of U.S. empire.
That's right.
Really depends on the suppression of dissent and the just creating a situation here where we all feel like we are being watched, and of course, indeed, we are being watched. It's very real. This is the contribution of Edward Snowden.
That's right. All right.
And now we know it. We can back it up.
And we have to leave it there. Deb Sweet from worldcan'twait.net, thank you very much, and we'll speak with you again next week.
All right, man. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. And we have, let's see, I think I'm going to play this just to stay in the mood.
Pretty, pretty, pretty as a picture. Witty, witty, witty as you can be. Blind cause your eyes see only glitter.
Close to the things that make you free.
Never stop to think about a downfall.
Happens at the end of every line.
Just when you think you pulled a fast one.
Happens to the foolish all the time. Somebody's watching. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you.
Games are to be played with words, etc.
Love is to be made when you're for real.
Ups and downs are caused by life in general.
Some of yours, no matter how you feel.
Shady as a lady in a mustache.
Feelings camouflaged by rosy grins.
Secrets have a special way about them.
Moving to and fro among your friends. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you. Live it down tomorrow afternoon.
Sunday school don't make you cool forever.
Razor is the silver of your spoon.
The nicer the nice, the higher the price.
This is what you pay for what you need.
The higher the price, the nicer the nice.
Jealous people like to see you bleed. Somebody's
course, means we've come to the end of our program. This is CPRmetro.org, Community Progressive Radio for the Metropolitan New York area and the world. From the Metropolitan New York area to the world and beyond, wherever you may be. You've been inside the CPR Morning Show with Don DeBar. I am, have been, and ever shall be, for better or worse, Don DeBar. And I will be Don DeBar again tomorrow. You can bet your sweet pippy. That's for you, Bernard. And when we come back with another edition of the CPR Morning Show, Bernard White is up next with Emanations, and hopefully he'll be followed by Black Agenda Radio. They're usually here Tuesdays. There seems to be some sort of tech issue, but I hope we'll resolve it for some 3 hours from now when it's time for it to come up. So keep it right here and check out Bernard, of course. He's still on the road, but I think we have the tech issues resolved, and keep it right here. CPR News will be up at our website, cprmetro.org, sometime in the early mid-afternoon today, New York time, say by about 3 p.m., certainly, New York time. So check that out, and thanks for listening.
Same way that they can't show a bell. What the hell are we supposed to do? When it's black against blue, rich against poor, them against us, won't be no peace till we see just us. No justice, no peace, take it to the streets. Modern day MLK, turn the right cheek. They wanna oppress with violence, they protest. We get no rest and come with peaceful protest. No justice, no peace, take it to the streets. Modern day MLK, turn the right cheek. They wanna oppress with violence, they protest. We get no rest and come with peaceful protest.
Can't you open your eyes and see the house is burnt? Every day, and we're in a hell of a condition because we've made a covenant with a government that is death itself, with a people that have lied to us, deceived us, and murdered us, and rubs us good on one side and kicks us in the behind on the other. You are a deceived people. This nation is not about poor people. Whether they're black, brown, red, yellow, or white, this nation is about rich people, privileged people, powerful people, and to hell with the weak, the poor. They must serve. If you don't have the testicular fortitude to say what needs to be said, then sit down and stop trying to say you speak for our people and the hurt of the poor.
Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable.
You know it's true. This is CPRmetro.org. Up next is Bernard White and Emanations, so keep it right here.